All right, your first photo job is something that comes up faster than most people are expecting it to, so it's always good to be ready for that. So I thought it'd be a good topic to cover today, with 5 questions you should ask. So inevitably, like a friend or a family member is going to come up and say, like, how much does a photo shoot cost? I want you to do this. And how much does a photo shoot cost is like the most one of the more difficult questions to answer in the world, because how much a photo shoot costs is the same answer as how long is a piece of string. It really depends on what people want. Some photographers are absolutely kind of retail consumer based and they have a set package. They're like, hey, come in for your high school headshots. You get 4 looks. They're printed on this kind of paper. It's $200. Talk to you later. Goodbye. But for people that aren't doing a very set up package for everything, you're custom quoting everything under the sun. So sometimes it's a 2 hour engagement shoot by a local beach. Sometimes it's a wedding on a 5 hour plane flight away. Sometimes an elephant is involved. Sometimes there are 20 models that you have to cram inside a bus. And there's not just a stick your finger up and be like, nah, that's going to be about 75K answer to those things. So these are the questions, the very base you should ask everybody, and this is obviously just a starting point for a conversation. So first thing I want to know from any client is, what are the final deliverables? What do they actually want to receive at the end of this? Because I think everything very easily gets lost in the details. Like, we need to know what the final output is. Is it 20 images for print and then a short 30-second video? Is it just one amazing headshot for a book cover? Like, this helps kind of point all the other questions to a very specific endpoint, which helps everybody in the conversation. So at the end of this, you can ask the client, what do you want to be holding in your hands or have in your inbox? What does that specific thing look like? And you just have to wiggle details out of them, like that many images, how big, how small, what's it going to be used for, things like that. That kind of gets the ball rolling. With photo shoots, there's not always going to be crazy amounts of budget for everything. So I always like to ask the client what they can provide. If you're going to be using a lot of models and talent, like, can we use your staff or employees for background? Because then that's something we don't have to pay for model wise. Do you have more locations, like your stores or any kind of commercial assets that we can use for a different shoot location, so we don't have to go through the permitting process or use a scout to actually find somewhere that we can have a complete control over? If they have some abandoned warehouse somewhere that you can use for a photo shoot, awesome, totally great to help with the pricing and figure out how that affects the final cost. Sometimes access is a big thing, and not a lot of companies will think about it in terms of this, so you really have to kind of needle in and think of what you need to create those final deliverables and say, well, I'm going to need transport to this location, a place to stay, a location to do these shoot. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, we have like a commercial truck that goes up there twice a week and we could ship all those, like, blah, 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 this way. You'd be surprised at things that come out of these conversations because people aren't thinking about the kind of wheeling and dealing nature of shoots like this. Any constraints you need to be aware of. So, there's so much that happens before a photo shoot needs to get asked for. There's lots of conversations, email chains, and it could be months and months. Things have been sitting on a shelf. A new person has taken over for that project and they don't have all the details. And they have all this secret information that you really need to kind of sponge out of them. So constraints could be like, oh yeah, by the way, we need the final deliverables by the end of next week. You're like, oh, okay, well that changes a lot of things in terms of the cost and who I can hire, who's going to be available, the types of permits we need to get, where I can get my rentals from, what I need to do to my schedule to make this all possible, if there's any rushed work that needs to be pushed through from a post-production standpoint. Some other constraints could be what's going to be in the images. Whether do you need your clients to be masked because you're doing kind of a COVID lifestyle stock shoot? Does this need to be shot during sunset because you have a whole bunch of day-based images, so you need to shoot this during a specific part of the day to match up and kind of flush out that area of your image library? All these little things to think about. And you can't just kind of openly ask this question, say constraints, what can you think of? You have to kind of like start to needle, like, does the time of day matter? Does the demographics in this photo shoot matter? Are there anything that you've shot before that you didn't like that you now need to change moving forward? And they'll be like, oh yeah, right, Phil hired that photographer that we hated because they did X, Y, Z. Or like, oh, okay, cool, we're not going to do that on this photo shoot. That's a good constraint to be aware of. Who is the signing authority? So since there's lots of layers to any good bureaucracy, and bureaucracies just happen to have money for photo shoots, you want to understand who's actually signing on the dotted line. Because if you're talking and asking questions to the person that's not actually the signing authority, you're likely going to have that conversation again with that person. Is that their direct report? Does this person have authority to sign on behalf of the client? It's important to know before you get into the details in the weeds with this stuff, because they also might not have the answers. You might not be speaking to the right person, and they might not have the right authority to begin with. So it's not that you don't want to waste your time with that person. You just want to understand what volume of information you're going to get from them and how much to document. So when you need to take to the next level or make a pitch to the like C-level suite of executive, like this is all the work we've done, this is what we talked about, blah, blah, blah. These are actually the people that are going to be signing your check and signing the actual contract that you're going to make with this client. Because yes, no matter how dinky the photo shoot is, you should have a contract. We'll talk about that in another video. And I think this is the one question that gets overlooked the most often, is when do they need an answer by? So many people talk in kind of like narrative, like soon, you know, eventually, like as soon as you can have it. And soon is this like big blanket word that means everything to everybody. Soon to some people could be like in the next hour. Soon could be like by the end of the quarter. So really helping clarify your timelines and how much time you have to work on this quote, because that also impacts the price. Sometimes you can rush it through yourself. Sometimes you need to like hire out a producer and a talent scout to get you better numbers and get quotes for all the types of help you need, like hair and makeup, the type of styling you're gonna need to do for this, all the props and any location rentals, things like that. That all takes time to do. So the more time you have to do that kind of helps out and takes the pressure off, because I know one thing I'm guilty of, even in making these videos, is giving people an answer right away, as soon as possible, because I strive to make people happy. I want to have them leave with a positive experience, and that's not always feasible. So by asking this question for myself at the end, usually gives me way more window than I'm expecting to have. They're like, oh, we need it soon. So I'm thinking still back in like photo school days, like, oh, 24 to 48 hours. And then I just start freaking out on my keyboard. They're like, oh no, so-and-so's away on vacation until the end of May. So could you have it to us mid-June? And you're just like, this sigh of relief just washes over you. And you're like, oh, my life just got 100% better because I figured out when they actually, need this by. So when you need an answer by, important thing to kind of clarify with the client. So neither of you have any miscommunications about the next time you're going to touch base and say, hey, here's all the things you talked about. This is what it's all going to cost. And then you can kind of continue the conversation from there. That's it. You can stop the video now if you don't want to listen to me spiel, but I am growing this channel, so please do like and subscribe. That's really fun. I've been doing these live for just over, I think this is week 11 right now, and the whole point of doing this live in the beginning was to kind of generate questions from the audience, and the one thing I never have open because it hasn't happened is the chat. And lo and behold, there are no questions in the chat, which is fine, and that's okay. But the whole thing is I'm tying myself to teaching these classes live on Tuesday nights at 6:30 p.m., and I don't really need to be doing that. So what I'm going to be doing moving forward is launching videos on a regular schedule, but not so much doing them live. Maybe in the far off future when there's like enough of a following, what I'll do is take these videos, these will be separate, and then once a month or something, I'll do a live AMA to like answer questions of photographers and things like that. But right now, kind of teaching at 6:30 Tuesday nights doesn't make as much sense as I thought it would 11 weeks ago. So that's a change you'll see in the coming weeks for the channel. But thank you to those who have shown up on Tuesday nights. It's been really fun. You're all a bunch of very quiet listeners, which is great. Hopefully some of this is helpful and gives you a little bit of insight into photography. I really appreciate you sticking around, but we're going to adjust that schedule a little bit moving forward. I still do want to produce things on a weekly tempo that feels right to me and also sustainable, but I also want to enjoy my Tuesday nights and also take a little bit of a break from this kind of production schedule for the summer because it's so nice out where I live, and I'd like to really take advantage of that. Anyhow, I hope you have a great Tuesday, and we will talk soon.